CMTG Munster, your place for Commander games every Monday and Thursday. Goblin approved.
Hey gang, just to let you know, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com and originalmagicart.store. Using the code gets you 10% off orders $10 or more, and you get to help out the channel at the same time. Today's game is a bit of a special one, as I filmed at a GP or MagicFest or whatever you want to call it, New Jersey. I had a fantastic time attending my first real GP, and I met 1 million people, I signed a bunch of cards, and I filmed a bunch of games, so look forward to them. In today's game, we have Ryan, who sacrificed 2 lands to the crop rotation in an earlier game you might remember, playing Tana and Tymna. He keeps a Tendershoot Dryad, a Null Rod, Llanowar Elves, Savannah, Verdant Catacombs, Aura of Silence, and Fire Covenant. The rest of the table consists of some of Ryan's friends, with Alex playing Saheeli, keeping Heuristic Study, Sanctum of Ugin, Spell Swindle, Wormcoil Engine, Mountain, Mox Opal, and Inventor's Fair. We have Sean playing Teysa Karlov, keeping a Cabal Coffers, Necropotence, Godless Shrine, Soul Ring, Teysa Orzhov Scion, Plains, and a Grave Titan. Lastly, we have Artie playing Raff Capuchin, keeping an Urza's Ruinous Blast, Sunscape Familiar, Lavinia of the Tenth, Azorius Key Ruin, Plains, Soul Ring, and Sea of Clouds. Alex wins the die roll and starts us off. Alex plays a Mountain as the first land of the game, and he casts a Mox Opal, passing to Sean. Sean plays an untapped Godless Shrine, taking 2, which allows him to cast his Soul Ring before passing to Ryan. Ryan plays and cracks a Marsh Flats, going to find a Temple Garden, bringing it into play untapped. He takes a total of 3 damage from this, and he taps the Temple Garden for Llanowar Elves. Artie plays a Sea of Clouds and casts a Soul Ring. Alex plays Inventor's Fair, passing to Sean. Sean drops his copy of Marsh Flats and cracks it. He goes to find Scrublands and puts it onto the field. We then see him tap out for his commander, Teysa Karlov, and he passes to Ryan. Ryan plays a Savannah in his main phase, and Aura of Silence comes out. Artie drops a Command Tower, and Sunscape Familiar comes into play before he passes to Alex. Alex plays a Sanctum of Ugin for his land for turn, and he passes to Sean. Sean plays a Plains and casts Viscera Seer. He then casts the original Teysa and passes turn. Ryan plays and cracks his Verdant Catacomb, taking 1 to go and find a Badlands. We then see a Living Plane hit the field, and I'm very tempted to just stop recording the game. I also realize at this point that Ryan has been putting his graveyard on the wrong side of his board like some kind of monster, and I make him fix it. Artie plays a Plains, and he passes. Alex draws, but with no lands to play, has to pass. Sean plays a Plains, and swings everything at Ryan. I say everything, but I obviously don't mean his lands, because Sean uses those in his second main phase to cast a Grave Titan. This Titan enters and gains Sean 2 zombie tokens before he passes to Ryan. Ryan also seems a bit tight on lands, but he still has enough to cast Tana in his main phase before passing to Artie. At the end of Ryan's turn, Artie flashes in Raff. Artie casts Urza's Ruinous Blast in his main phase, not being very comfortable with that Living Plane on the field. With the spell in the stack, Ryan sacrifices his Aura of Silence to blow up Artie's Soul Ring. Sean also wants to do stuff before the spell resolves, and he sacrifices his non-legendary creatures to the Viscera Seer to scry. He bottoms the first scry and leaves the card on top for the second, and then the board gets wiped of non-legendary and non-land permanents. Alex draws for turn and has to discard before passing to Sean. Sean plays a Swamp and casts Necropotence. He swings the original Teysa at Alex for 2, and the new Teysa at Ryan for 2 as well. In his second main phase, Sean puts 5 life into Necropotence, setting aside 5 cards to be put into his hand at the end of his turn. Ryan still can't find a land, but he does cast Tymna in his main phase. Moving to combat, Tana hits Sean for 2, which gives Ryan 2 Saproling tokens. Ryan then uses Tymna's post-combat main phase ability to lose 1 life and draw a card, as one opponent lost life during combat. He's lucky, as it's a Gaia's Cradle, which he plays. He taps a Cradle for 4 mana, and he casts an Elvish Mystic, and then a Reclamation Sage. The Sage comes in and blows up Sean's Necropotence. Before it happens though, Sean activates the Necropotence for another 5 life. setting aside 5 cards to be put into his hand at the end of his next turn. Artie draws and passes. Alex draws and is excited. It's not a land, but he's able to cast an Izzet Signet, which he drew and moves forward his mana production ability. With nothing else, he passes. Sean plays a Cabal Coffers and moves to combat. He swings both Teysas at the untouched Artie, and Artie declares that he'll block Teysa Orzhov Scion with Raff, and takes only 2 from the new Teysa while killing the old one. Sean then casts a Serra's Ascendant and a Wormcoil Engine in his second main phase. He then moves to his end step, putting the 5 cards to hand, and then has to discard down to 7. Ryan draws and moves to combat. He swings Tana at Alex and 2 Saplings at Artie. Artie declares no blocks, and both Alex and Artie lose 2 life. Ryan then gains 2 more Sapling tokens from Tana and pays 2 life in his post-combat main phase to Tymna's ability to draw 2. He plays a Polluted Delta, and then taps the Cradle to cast a Tendershoot Dryad. Ryan then cracks the Delta to go and find a Bayou, and Alex kindly provides Ryan with City's Blessing token. Ryan then casts a Fire Covenant he's had in his hand since the start of the game, and pays a total of 8 life to kill Raff, Teysa, and the Ascendant. With the spell in the stack, Artie flashes in his Azorius Key Rune, which he then taps to pay for an Aether Spellbomb. Before passing to Artie though, Ryan then casts a Null Rod, and passes. Artie plays an island, and we see a Wrath of God wipe the board. Sean gets his Worm tokens with the Wormcoil dying, and Artie passes to Alex. Alex draws and moves to discard. Sean plays an Ancient Tomb and moves to combat. He hits Ryan for 6, gaining 3 from the Worm token with lifelink. Sean then loses 2 from the Ancient Tomb to help cast Yahenni, and he drops a Blood Artist, before passing to Ryan. Ryan plays and cracks a Misty Rainforest, taking 1 to find a forest. He then recasts Tymna, and he passes to Artie. Artie plays an Azorius Guildgate as his land for turn, which comes in tapped, and he passes to Alex. Alex draws and finally plays an island. He thinks about what he wants to do, and in the meantime, Sean casts Enlightened Tutor in response to whatever will happen to save some time. Alex casts a Solemn Simulacrum, and both he and Sean go search through their libraries. Alex grabs an island and puts it onto the field, while Sean finds and puts Exquisite Blood on top of his library. Sean draws the Exquisite Blood for turn, and he plays a Caves of Koilos as his land for turn. He then pays 6, taking 2 from the Ancient Tomb, to recast Teysa. Moving to combat, Sean swings the 2 worms and Yahenni at Ryan for 8, gaining 6 life as his tokens now have lifelink and vigilance. Sean then sacrifices the token with Death Touch to Yahenni, which triggers the Blood Artist twice. He puts both triggers on Ryan, who dies. Sean then moves to cast Exquisite Blood, which Artie is quick to counter with a Render Silent. Artie casts Lavinia of the 10th in his main phase, detaining all permanents with a converted mana cost of 4 or less. Artie then casts Swords to Plowshares on Teysa, which makes Sean sad as he can no longer sacrifice her to Yahenni. Sean gains 2 life, and we then move to Alex's turn. Alex gains 1 in his upkeep to the Inventor's Fair trigger, and he brings out Saheeli in his main phase. He upticks her to reduce the cost of the next spell by X, where X is the amount of artifacts he has, and he only needs to pay 1 blue to put out a Master Transmuter. Sean hardcasts a Reviarch in his main phase, and has to drop an Ash on its altar afterwards to sacrifice it due to Yahenni still being detained. He gains 2 colorless mana from killing the Elemental, and he brings back a Serra's Ascendant and Teysa Orzhov Scion with Reviarch's on death trigger. He also drains Artie for 1 with the Blood Artist trigger. Sean then sacrifices Yahenni to the altar for another 2 colorless, and drains Artie for 1, and gains a 1/1 Spirit token from the original Teysa. He does it again for the Blood Artist, draining Artie for 1 again, gaining 2 more colorless, and a Spirit token. Sean is then able to sacrifice 3 white creatures to Teysa's ability to exile Alex's Master Transmuter. Sean then uses some of his floating colorless mana, and takes 1 to tap the Cave of Koilos for 1 white mana to cast an Anointed Procession. He then passes to Artie. Artie untaps, draws a card, and passes turn. Alex gains 1 and casts a Kuldath the Forge Master in his main phase, with 1 floating mana remaining. He then upticks Saheeli again and reduces the cost of his next spell by 5, and uses the remaining mana to cast a Wormcoil Engine. He then passes turn. Sean takes 2 from the Ancient Tomb as he recasts Teysa in his main phase. We then make a bit of a mistake as Sean sacrifices his Worm token to the altar and gains 2 spirit tokens since the death trigger is doubled, which is then doubled by the Anointed Procession, giving him a total of 4 spirits. Sean sacrifices 3 of the spirits to original Teysa's ability to exile the Wormquill engine. He then sacrifices new Teysa to the altar, gaining 2 more spirits as she dies, and he sacrifices the 3 remaining spirits to exile the Forge Master and moves to combat. He swings the original Teysa at Alex, who blocks with a Solemn. The Solemn dies, and Alex draws a card. At the end of Sean's turn, Artie flashes in Raff. Artie plays an Evolving Wilds and cracks it to find a tapped island. He then passes to Alex. Alex plays a City of Brass and upticks Saheeli to reduce the cost of his next spell by 2. He casts a Mere Battlesphere, taking 1 from the City of Brass. We then see Alex cast Phyrexian Metamorph and has it come in as a copy of the Battlesphere again, gaining even more mirrors and passing to Sean. Sean plays a Plains and casts Sensei's Divining Top. He activates it and rearranges the top 3. We then see a Stoneforge Mystic hit the field, and Sean goes to find a Skull Clamp, and thankfully gets to shuffle his library because he doesn't like the cards on top. Sean then casts and equips the clamp onto the Stoneforge, sacrificing it to the altar to gain 2 colorless mana, drawing 2 cards, but he forgets to get his 2 spirit tokens from the original Teysa. Sean then activates the top again to rearrange the top 3. He then taps the top to put it on top and draws a card. Sean then casts another Traitor and clamps it, drawing 2 more cards. We then see Sean tap the Soul Ring to recast and activate his top once more. He puts the clamp onto original Teysa and passes to Artie. At the end of turn, Artie flashes in a Burnished Heart. Artie then activates and sacrifices it to find 2 basics and puts them onto the field. For Artie's turn, he untaps, draws a card, and passes, because who needs to play on your turn when you have Flash? Alex gains 1 on his upkeep from the Fair trigger, and he casts a Treasure Mage in his main phase. He tutors 4 and puts a Blightsteel Colossus to his hand. Alex then upticks Saheeli, reducing his next spell by a lot, and gets to cast the Colossus for free. Moving to combat, Alex swings his 2 Battlespheres at Sean. He responds to the attack trigger to the original Battlesphere, tapping his 8 mirrors. This has him deal 8 straight damage to Sean's face, and he pumps the original sphere by +8/+0. Sean blocks the big Battlesphere, but still takes 4 damage from the copy getting through. Sean also gets to draw 2 cards from the original Teysa dying with the clamp still on her. Sean draws and plays an Isolated Chapel in his main phase, before activating his top and looking at the top 3 cards of his library. He then activates the Cabal Coffers and taps enough lands to recast Teysa Karlov. With the commander on the stack though, Alex counters it with a Spell Swindle and gains 4 treasure tokens. Sean then passes turn and Artie taps out to cast War of Invention where X is 4. He goes and grabs his copy of Phyrexian Metamorph and has it become a copy of the Blightsteel Colossus. Artie draws and plays a Plains. We then see an overloaded Cyclonic Rift hit the stack, which resolves, much to Alex's dismay. Artie then smacks Alex with the copied Blightsteel Colossus, taking him out, and he swings Lavinia and Raff at Sean. Sean draws for turn and plays a Windswept Heath. He cracks it, taking 1 to go and find a Plains. He then casts a Mox Diamond, discarding a Swamp, and recasts Sensei's Divining Top, activating it. He's very lucky and finds a Karmic Guide among the top 3, which is exactly what he needs. He taps the top to draw it, and casts it. Responding to the spell, Artie sacrifices his Spell Bomb to hopefully draw a counter, but isn't so lucky. The Karmic Guide then enters the field and returns Reveillark. And Sean drops his Ashnod's Altar from his hand. Sean has now assembled 2/3 of his combo, with the 3rd piece being in his graveyard and easily recurable. He's able to sacrifice the Karmic Guide to the Ashnod's Altar, then the Reveillark, and he brings back the Karmic Guide and Blood Artist from the Reveillark on death trigger. He's then able to use the Karmic Guide to bring back the Reveillark, and continues to loop it while using the Blood Artist trigger to drain Artie out for game. Game review time. So, I hope everyone can be forgiving. There were a few missed triggers and a few mistaken triggers, but that's just part of the game. There were about a dozen or so more people watching us as we played the game, plus there was also the constant concern of a judge coming and needing the table for one of the side events, which puts a lot of pressure on the players. But ultimately though, I don't think it was that big of an issue. It did cause Alex to lose 2 creatures to exile, but he still died to Artie's Blightsteel Colossus after the Cyclonic Rift anyway. I do think Ryan dealt the most damage to himself this game, and really Sean only had to do a little bit of damage to finish him off. It was unfortunate for Alex as he was pretty far behind the game in terms of land, but once Saheeli was out, he was able to cast a lot of spells very quickly thanks to a reduction. One might even argue said reduction was what caused his downfall, as if he hadn't been able to cast the Blightsteel for free, Artie wouldn't have been able to cheat one out at the end of his turn thanks to the Whir of Invention. Speaking of Artie, Raff Capuchin was fantastic, and I really undervalued him going into this game. It does make perfect sense that you'd build around Historic, and all of a sudden everything including your commander has Flash, which is just super powerful. It was also really great to see the new Teysa Karlov deck in action, even though there were some mistakes. She's a very powerful engine, and I filmed about 3 or 4 different games with her with different pilots, so be sure to look forward to the games and watching for the differences. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.